Good evening, boys and ghouls. Welcome to Where the Scary Things Are. I'm your host with the most, Monster Mash Canned, and with me is my co-host, the Mistress of Darkness, the Queen of Fright, the Lady of the Night Muse. What's up, lady? How you doing tonight?
Pretty good. It's still hot over here in Michigan. It's still humid, still sticky, still gross.
Oh, I know, right? I'm
It's just
back at the
summer.
I'm back at the job site in Midtown Manhattan, and it is so disgusting out. Like it's
Yeah,
killing me, and I
the
couldn't wait to
sauna.
get home. Yeah, so I got a good question for you. In regards to the show we're going to be doing tonight. If you could sit down and have dinner with any wrestler at any period of time, who would it be?
Oh, I have so many favorites. I would really like to sit down with I really like Jake the Snake or maybe Sting. Stone Cold would be fun to split a beer with or have a couple beers with, or not split a beer. He's gonna drink his
Yeah,
own,
you
but
might drink them all. Yeah.
he might drink mine. I don't know. I think it would be a blast to have dinner with, just kind of just hear him tell stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I was trying to think of mine, and there's so many of them. Although he's not my favorite wrestler of all time, he's definitely my probably my top five. But The Rock, I think that'd be like I think I'd
Yeah.
be laughing the whole time, you
Yes.
know. And
Yeah.
same thing with Stone Cold. I mean, that'd be great. But Shawn Michaels would probably be mine, of course. Um,
Great
so
stories, I'm sure.
I know I have so many to ask. And then I don't know if you really follow wrestling too much, but I think the Undertaker just retired. I don't know if that means anything in these days because they retired and they come back.
With The
But
Undertaker, it definitely means something. He's a legend for sure,
yeah,
Hall of Famer. So yeah, definitely. I follow it. I don't follow it as much as I used to. I do watch it, but I don't watch it as religiously. But yeah, I still do follow it.
well, also joining us is the man, the myth, the legend, Chris, the creature, ZC from ZC Emporium for B movies. I just get so confused with all these monikers I give you guys. How are you doing tonight, Chris? How's it going, buddy?
What a day. I couldn't even begin to tell you how wonderfully things have gone today. This is, nobody has had a better day than I've had ever.
Wow. I love it. I love the positivity. I feel it through
Yes.
the YouTubes.
Oh, yeah.
Right on. And from the depths of Florida, the horror behind Promote Horror, Horo. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Oh man, I'm exhausted. So all I gotta say is I've come here to chew bubble gum and record a podcast, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
You're too sweet.
Love it.
I love it. Well done. Well done. So listen, we are very excited to be with everybody tonight, recording live on YouTube. If you follow our show, please hit that like and subscribe button. That helps us out. Follow us on social media at Scary Things Pod on Twitter, and I believe it's the same on Facebook too. Just type it in the little Google search there, and we'll find us. Where the scary things are. Follow us, leave us messages. Go to our website www.wherethescarythingsare.com. Send us an email. Talk to us. We want to hear how we're doing. If we suck so bad, we want to hear that so we can laugh at each other. We don't take this serious. We're not getting paid or anything like that. We're still waiting for that first paycheck. But
Right.
yeah, no, we're having a good time with this. This is episode 52. So yeah, we've come a long way. I also want to just give a really big special shout out to Isaac Thorne for doing our awesome intro. So make sure you follow him at isaacthorne.com as well as Twitter at Isaac Thorne. He's a very talented individual, definitely a must follow on social media. So tonight is going to be an awesome show as always. We're going to do our regular get-ups where I'll give you the beer of the week and the horror movie flashback. Muse will be dropping her Sinister Six. Chris is going to review our movie, which I'll tell you about in a second. And Horo is going to talk remakes that piss him off, or maybe not. We're two weeks in a row, right, buddy? You haven't been pissed off, and I liked them too.
Yeah.
All right. You gotta continue that positive energy that ZC's given. So we'll see what happens, right? So tonight we're getting into some WrestleMassacre. This movie is now available on demand. Listen, I understand that some people go and they watch horror movies looking to be terrified or scared. There's a lot of critics out there. Obviously, we started a podcast. We talk whatever we want to talk about. This movie's not going to be for everybody. It's definitely a B movie, but it's a really good B movie, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. We're going to have on three of the actors from that movie: Richie Acevedo, Julio Banya Fernandez, and Jimmy flame. So these three guys really did an awesome job in the movie. Check it out. Listen to the podcast. See if you like it. Listen to their interviews later on. We'll get to that at about 8 o'clock. With all that being said, I need to crack a beer because I am winded. So tonight, this is what I'm drinking. This is one of my favorite beers. This is the Einstock Icelandic Arctic Berry Ale. This is only a summer release beer, so you only get it during the summertime. I've had it before, but I saw it in the store. I had to get it because it's summertime. Let me take a little sip. Yeah, that's good. I love it. So really nice, crisp beer. Definitely something you can sit outside by the pool and drink a bunch of them and not feel a thing. All right, so horror movie flashback. Not really necessarily a horror film, but I do want to give homage to two awesome people. One birthday and something unfortunate. We lost a really cool director. So happy birthday to Bruce Campbell. He is one of my all-time favorite horror icons, definitely in my Mount Rushmore of horror icons. So happy birthday to you, Bruce. And I want to just pay our respects to Joel Schumacher. He gave us some great films, namely The Lost Boys. But yeah, huge loss to the horror community and just the movie community. We will miss him dearly. We'll forgive him for Batman Forever. That's probably why Horror doesn't want to go watch Batman with me. Yeah, but you get a pass on that one. Yeah, so those are my horror movie flashbacks for the week. And I'm going to throw it right on over to Muse and see what's going on with the Sinister Six.
Okay, so you mentioned WrestleMassacre, so I thought it would be really fun to come up with my top 6 favorite fight scenes in a horror movie. So I'm going to ask you guys what some of yours are here in a few minutes. But I'm going to start off jumping right in. Obviously, my all-time favorite, probably one of my all-time favorite fight scenes, and this is how Ken and I met. Number 1, They Live, Roddy Piper and Keith David. Obviously, so when Horror opened up with the I'm all out of bubblegum thing, I thought that's perfect. So yeah, obviously, I just rewatched this one a little bit before the show. It's a 6+ minute fight scene, and it is absolutely one of those memorable fight scenes that you watch and it never gets old. So, I mean, I think that it's we all know the story. There's alien overlords have invaded, and basically, Roddy Piper is trying to get Keith David to, understand this. He's like, put the glasses on, or you're going to eat that trash can. Just remember that epic line. And it's one of those lines that just sticks with you throughout the rest of the movie. Besides, I'm all out of bubblegum. I'm here to kick ass, the whole 9. But this fight scene just goes on and on. They're smashing up cars. They're smashing up each other. There's some great wrestling moves. And they beat the holy hell out of each other. Meanwhile, Roddy Piper is still yelling for Keith David's character to put the glasses on. He's saying no. And I mean, it's just epic. So, I mean, I actually met Ken through this fight scene. It was a thread on Twitter. And I'm not going to tell the whole story because we've talked about it a few times, but it was definitely one of my top 3. And Ken gave me his top 3, and we became friends and realized that we just had a lot in common. But this was definitely one. This was both of one of our favorite fight scenes. So definitely number 1, Reign Supreme. They Live, probably one of the best cinematic fight scenes ever. Not just a horror movie, but just across the board for me. I would say is like my top 3 for sure. Number 2 is another really epic fight scene, and one we were waiting a ton of time for, years, in fact. Jason versus Freddy from 2003. Horror fans were waiting for this forever. I mean, it was talked about, then it was tabled, it was talked about, and then it was tabled. They were going to do it. They canceled. They finally got it together in 2003, and we were not disappointed. I loved this one. I think horror fans, some fans had issue with this one, and maybe it didn't tick all the boxes for everybody, but it did for me, especially for the end fight scene where we really see, because we're waiting the whole movie to see Jason and Freddy really throw down, and they finally do, right at Camp Crystal Lake. And it does not disappoint. I mean, I kind of felt like I want to see Freddy get beat up a little bit more. I want to see Jason get some more licks in, but they really beat the holy hell out of each other. I mean, they're using objects, they're throwing like pipes at each other, they're swinging these big metal objects at each other. I mean, it's just totally off the chain. Things are on fire. They're putting each other through walls, windows, anything. And they're just it's glorious. It's a gory, just absolute slugfest between these two. It did not disappoint, and it did not let me down. So definitely Jason versus Freddy at number 2. Number 3, Blade. Blade versus everybody, the end fight scene. Now, I'm not talking about the Deacon Frost showdown with Blade and Deacon Frost, but I'm talking about Blade at first has to take on all of Deacon Frost's little cronies, his little henchmen, and he just lays to waste everybody. I mean, he just starts whipping ass from the beginning. And it's the one guy, I cannot think of his name, but he like he like just totally destroys the guy's hands, and he just totally like beheads the guy like in like 2 seconds flat. The techno music starts, he just starts whipping everybody's ass for like 2 solid minutes, and it is glorious. And I mean, nobody does it better or cooler than Blade. I mean, Wesley Snipes was gold here. I mean, I could watch this fight scene over and over. This is another one I watched right before the show again, just kind of refresh myself, and I was just like, God, I love this movie. It made me want to watch the whole thing all over again. But the end fight scene where it was Blade versus everybody, that's what we're going to just affectionately call it, is just epic. It's right near the end of the movie. The fourth movie on my list of epic fight scenes is Dog Soldiers from 2002. Now, if you've missed this werewolf movie, if you like a good werewolf movie like I do, I would definitely check this one out. I believe it's streaming on Shudder if you have that available. And I think it's also streaming on Tubi TV, which is a free platform. You don't need a subscription for that. But Dog Soldiers is, somebody called it like a mashup of Predator versus The Howling, which I really loved. And it's actually a pretty apt description. So just kind of let that marinate in your brain for a second. So if you're not familiar with Dog Soldiers from 2002, I'm going to run it down for you really quick because I know some of us may not have seen this one. I actually just saw this one recently and I was not disappointed. So it centers on a group of British soldiers and they're on a training exercise and they're out in the Scottish Highlands and they find the hills are alive with the sound of werewolves. And everything gets pretty crazy before long and they're under siege. They stand their ground. They get themselves holed up in this cabin house / place and they really hold their ground. And it's a pretty knockdown drag out of the werewolves trying to get in and the soldiers trying to keep them out. And most of the fight is fought with guns, but the soldiers manage to get a few licks in before some of them are well and truly licked. So, but there's some pretty epic one-liners throughout this. There's a lot of great, like shoot 'em up, bang, bang type stuff, just awesome practical effects. The werewolves are trying to get in, they're trying to keep them out. It's pretty epic. So I would highly recommend this one. If you've not seen Dog Soldiers, you need to get on this one. Do not sleep on this one. It's a lot of fun. It's a great werewolf movie. Again, yeah, Predator meets The Howling. Definitely a really good analogy of that one. The fifth movie is Dusk Till Dawn. And obviously we've talked about this one numerous times, but who can forget that? And I'm not talking about the first, because there's a couple different bar fights in this one. Once they get to the titty twister, there's the first bar fight, but I'm talking about the fight that starts up after the family goes back into the back room and kind of like they fortify themselves. They're coming out with holy water balloons. They're coming out with all these weapons that they fashioned from all these truckers that have left all this cargo there. The vampires have killed all these different truckers over the years, and they've got all these boxes of things. And they fashion up all these crazy weapons. And there's one scene in particular where George Clooney's character faces off against Tom Savini's sex machine. And he gets a hold of his whip. And I mean, he wraps it around his neck. He just totally like beheads him. It's epic. And we think that's the end of Sex Machine, but it isn't. And for some reason, I missed this part. But Tom Savini transforms into this like giant rat-like creature, comes back to life. And of course, I think he's finished off by Juliette Lewis. I rewatched this one the other day and I was like, just wait a minute. He turned into a rat. I had to watch it a couple times. It was epic. But I mean, we've got vampires getting impaled, lots of blood, lots of guts, lots of great action, human on vamp action. And definitely one of those epic fight scenes of the humans versus the vampires. Definitely epic bar fight scene as well. The last one is actually a mishmash. The first one is 30 Days of Night, and I'm going to throw in an extra one that I have not seen because I do want to see it, and Omar will like this. But the first one is 30 Days of Night, and I looked on YouTube, and I could not find the actual epic fight scene between the head vampire and Josh Hartnett's character. But there is a fight scene near the beginning of the movie, again, with the townspeople against a particular vampire that's attacking one of the other police officers, and it is definitely brutal. It's gory, it's bloody. Somebody gets tossed into this meat grinder thing. It's insane. And I mean, this vampire is going crazy. It's a bloody mess. It's definitely one of those great bloody, gory vampire scenes. And everybody's just trying to get a lick in on this guy. And he's just going ballistic. But the other movie I'm going to give an honorable mention to is The Horde. And this is a French horror film. And there is a pretty epic fight scene between a female cop and a zombie. And I watched this last night. And I mean, they were going at it. I mean, the zombie is going ballistic. The female cop is going crazy, just beating the hell out of the zombie. And of course, we know zombies are like, hard to kill, obviously. So she's beating the crap out of this zombie. And it is just epic. It's a movie I want to go back and watch just because I saw that clip. I'm like, if this is any indication of how great the movie is going to be, I need to watch this in its entirety. So those are my top 6 best fight scenes, well, top 7 because I mentioned The Horde. So I'm going to go to Horo first this time and ask him what his favorite horror movie fight scene was, if he's thought of any.
Well, as usual, you've stolen some of them.
I know. I was hoping I did,
but that's okay. I love Freddy versus Jason.
Yes.
Everybody can say what they want about that movie, good or bad, but putting those two icons together is awesome. So that kind of makes me think. You almost said another one, but almost made me think of another one, which is Predator versus Alien. And again, everybody complains about those movies, this and that, and story, everything, but anytime you have Predator and Alien and fighting, that's just awesome.
Yes.
I love it for what it is. I mean, regardless of what you say about the storylines. And it's a shame that we don't get the chance to put more horror icons together and fight, because everybody wants to see it. And there's a lot of fan films out there that kind of dive into this thing because they're the only ones who can really do it, because, otherwise it's just a lot of lawyers and bullshit to get these films made. But that's definitely one of them. I can kind of think of another one, but I have a feeling Chris is going to say it, so I'm not going to say it. I'll let him take that. But obviously a big franchise full of action and fights. Another fun movie, which I liked, had a lot of good fights in it, was a movie called Mayhem, a little bit more recent. I believe it was on Joe Bob's show recently. Lots of crazy fight scenes in that one, but and obviously the one you mentioned, Dusk from Dawn, was awesome. And I kind of thinking of another one, which wasn't much of a fight, more of a quick boxing round, was when Jason and the boxer went toe to toe on the roof.
That was mine. That was mine.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, somebody's gonna say that. I almost said it too.
That's all right. I got more.
Get ready.
Wasn't much
We're
of
gonna
a
steal
fight,
each other.
but it's there.
Yes. I almost said that one. So great minds think alike, you guys.
Yeah. But now that I've let Chris off the hook and I've stolen Ken's, I'll pass it on. We'll let Ken go so we don't steal.
No. You know what? Age before beauty. I'll pass it over to Chris.
Oh dear. All right, Chris, what do you got?
Well, I'm not going to mention Godzilla versus any number of his opponents like Monster Zero, but
it's epic, yes.
The 3 movies I want to get to are in the spirit of a gift I received today of a wonderful cat-suited vixen beauty who is real badass. And I want to talk about Underworld, a couple of different fights in a couple of different movies. My favorite one is in Underworld 2, when she's joined up with a bunch of commandos from this mysterious corporation, and they're going down to get the main werewolf into these caverns. And everything's going fine until the main werewolf appears, and he goes through the commandos like crap through a goose. And it's a 2-minute, 20-second scene. She'll fire about 121 rounds, I did count, and there'll be 8 deaths in the scene, and of course she comes out unscathed in that wonderful black cat suit, and with wet hair and that wild look, and the Chinese throwing stars and the 2 guns and how she fires those 2 guns, pure poetry. I used to show it to a bunch of cops in the class I had. I used to teach police captains and lieutenants, and I showed the scene to them, and I won't tell you the context, but everyone loved it. Now, same concept here. We move over to the Resident Evil series, and whenever Mia Jovovich, and I think it's number 4, I know it wasn't number 3, when she fights with that Weston guy at the end, the guy who's actually a mutant, and the head opens up, and at the very end, just before the end of the movie, she has a big fight with him. But even in other movies, when she's either fighting with those two mutant hounds, remember those things? Her, I saw a thing on YouTube of how they choreographed and green screen those scenes, and she's got ropes attached to her, and she's pulled up in the air and turned around. It's just a wonderful scene, and one that I really love, just for personal satisfaction. Sort of a bargain basement Celine and a bargain basement Alice is Lorna Mitra in Doomsday, where she is captured by these Scottish survivors who are all madmen, and they're gonna feed her to the psycho bitch is who she is, this wild woman. And seeing this wild woman take apart the British army, and then they unleash her on Celine, and in like 2.5 seconds, not Celine, but Eden Sinclair, Major Eden Sinclair, who's played by Rona Mitra, they let Rona Mitra basically cuts off this woman's head in like 2.5 seconds, and it was so anticlimactic. But the look on the faces of the bad guys is just classic. So those are the ones that come immediately to mind.
Yeah, there's so many, and I'm thinking, but I'm classic. Frankenstein's my all-time favorite. So Frankenstein versus Wolfman. Anytime you saw that was my. That's something that popped up right away. You mentioned Blade. That's obviously, love that scene. Even from the opening scene when they were at the blood thing, that was just awesome.
At the club, yes.
Yeah. So good stuff there, and all three of the movies, there was some really good fight scenes in there. The second one had some really good fight scenes too. But one movie that I really enjoyed, and a really good fight scene, because you just wanted these monsters, you wanted him to kill him. An Interview with a Vampire, when Louis goes and he's got to fight that French vampire, I forgot who it is, because he kills Kristen Dunst and whatnot. So Louis goes after him, and he goes into the catacombs and like chops off his head with a sickle. So that was badass. That was probably one of my favorite scenes there. But yeah, there's so many great scenes. But great question, Muse. Good job.
All right. I thought you guys would like that and went along. I've been wanting to do that one for a while, but I was waiting for the perfect time, and this just seemed like the moment.
Yeah. So let's see what Horo's got this week for us.
All right. So full of surprises today. So I'm going to change this up a little bit and try to have a little bit of fun with this. And it kind of goes with the theme that we're doing here tonight. As you know, what I led off with. What I want to do is talk about a remake here, but not really a remake. Something that maybe we can remake and see if it's easy and see if it's hard. But it has not been remade, so thank God. Or, it apparently was going to be remade at one time, but it did not, and that's a good thing. And obviously, I'm talking about They Live, John Carpenter, 1988. We're all very familiar with the film. And, just to kind of give you the brief on it, basically a drifter here stumbles onto a world of aliens that can only be seen by sunglasses, special sunglasses. And lots of chaos ensues. The world's going to end. And of course, he has to save it because he is one of the only few people who can see these aliens. That is the brief of that. But let's imagine that we're going to remake this movie. And, maybe, I'm going to go through some ideas that I have, and then you guys can throw in your 2 cents and maybe some ideas you have of remaking this movie. Obviously, it doesn't need to be remade. They can leave it as is. But anyway, let's have some fun in the spirit of WrestleMassacre that we're going through here today, because the star of this show is the one and only Roddy Piper. And he does an excellent job in this movie. And he obviously presents big shoes to fill. And obviously, you guys can probably take a guess at who you want to fill those shoes. But I'll go with The Rock. Obviously, big Hollywood action star here, and definitely someone who is wise with the words. So I think he'd have quite some good things to say in this movie. The other stars in this movie is Keith David and Meg Foster. Who, Keith David plays alongside Roddy Piper. Not really a sidekick, but someone who kind of gets dragged into it, even though he doesn't want to. And then Meg Foster, I don't want to give it away if you've not seen this movie, shame on you. but she's obviously a big role in this movie as well. Um, we have aliens in this movie. Obviously, that opens the door for some things that you can do with them. Do you want to upgrade them? Do you want to change them? I thought they had a pretty cool look in the movie. Again, obviously, you can only see them through the sunglasses, but you can upgrade them there. You can change them, leave them as simple. I mean, back then, it almost just like skeleton creatures. Obviously, there's a lot that you can do there. Um, Obviously, one of the things that they were in this movie is a representation of the rich and the upper class. And if you wanted to change the political theme, you could do that. But I think it still holds up very true now and these days. There's a lot of talk about um, the upper 1% against everybody else. Lots of complaints about CEOs and how much money they make and so forth. So, and obviously politicians are always a hot topic. So obviously you can keep that theme if you want. Obviously John Carpenter, that was one of the reasons he made the movie back then. So it still holds true now. So if you still want to play the political route, that is a way to go. But if you want to come up with your own alien background here, and that might be something to do if you really want to change how these aliens look or so forth. Maybe you want to change, what they're up to in this movie. Obviously, the line that I said at the beginning of the podcast is the famous line from this movie and one of the best lines in horror history. Um, I think The Rock could deliver it pretty well. There's probably not a lot of people that can deliver that line. He can do it pretty well, and obviously, if him doing the role also opens the door for him to come up with his own line. Again, this line is going to be hard to top, but he's had a lot of good lines, especially in his wrestling career. And Roddy Piper was supposed to do this in his wrestling career, which is how he kind of came up with it. So maybe The Rock could come up with something there of his own. Yeah, you never know. Um, Obviously, Muse talked about it, the big fight scene in this movie. Obviously, if you're using The Rock, he's already done plenty of great fight scenes in other movies. So that might be a problem there as creating another exciting scene. So maybe you want to bypass it. I know it's a big thing in this movie, but The Rock has already done so many fight scenes. So if you use The Rock, do you really want to have him in another fight? And again, I guess that also depends on who you cast in the other role. Obviously, you have to cast somebody opposite of him that can go toe to toe to him, which is kind of hard. We don't have a Jason Stratham here, and some other people that he's taken on in the past, and so that'll be an interesting debate if we were to remake this movie. Do you want to do the big fight scene again? Obviously, you have The Rock there, so why not? But again, setting that up is going to be a hard thing to do, and especially a long, drag-out fight again. Um, Going kind of back to the aliens, the glasses. I would think this is something that we could maybe change in a remake. Maybe use special contacts. Very back in the original, they used very standard, very cheap sunglasses there. Being that this would maybe be a futuristic movie, maybe do contacts, maybe do some special slick looking glasses, maybe come up with a different way that you can see these aliens. Maybe there's something more creative out there that you could do that with. And then finally, I guess the overall story here. A lot of times we talk about remakes. You want to add something to the story here. I think a lot of it would be, you could obviously touch on Nada, which is Roddy's character. There was a lot unknown about him. He was a drifter, and they didn't even name him. Nobody calls him by the name of anything in this movie, which is kind of how he just got the name Nada. You can obviously tackle that and maybe give him some backstory. But I kind of like the mysteriousness of it, and him just being a random Joe coming here and falling into the middle of this weirdness and joins a party of crazy people trying to stop aliens. So you could do that. And the other thing I was kind of thinking of is obviously more background on the aliens. Where, how did they, first take over? Because obviously when Nada falls into this, the aliens are obviously well in charge. There's plenty of them around. So maybe a revisit, maybe a short little bit about how they got here, how they originally took over. or maybe expand more towards the end of the movie and kind of drag that out and more of what the aliens were trying to accomplish there. So changing that up, a remake that I don't want to see, but something that, is a possibility. You never know. And like I said, that they almost revisited it at one time. So those are some of my ideas. I didn't want to take everything. I know I covered a lot, but I kind of throw it now on your guys' lap.
I'm going first this time. I'm going first this time.
Go for it.
Yeah. All right. So, but it's not going to be anybody that you guys pick. Trust me. So I follow wrestling. I got really into it a couple years ago because of this wrestler came back. And lo and behold, this wrestler was paying homage to Roddy Piper. Now, the way that, and I'll get back to that in a second, but the way that the entertainment business is going now is we're seeing a lot more female leads, right? So why not the Roddy Piper's character be taken over or something like that with Ronda Rousey? We see Ronda Rousey in a lead role, and I would put her as maybe like Chris, don't kill me, okay? But maybe she's something like she's a rookie Secret Service, and she's into the White House, and she's just seeing it kind of what's going on behind doors or whatnot, and she gets the glasses or whatever. And it's something like that where you go straight to the top of the government and you see like, the United States has been taken over by aliens, because how else are we going to explain what's going on? But I think that would be kind of cool to see Ronda Rousey get a role like that. I think she's a badass. The only downfall is her acting ability. She's been in a few action movies, but she's really dry, So, but she can fight, man. We know what she can do. She can do some damage. She's got the build. She's got the talent as far as the action wise. I'd watch it. I'd be into it. But as far as like a counterpart, I would think, you could find like another wrestler or a woman or something like that, or even a guy. That would be kind of cool to see you beat the shit out of a guy, like who's annoying, Kevin Hart, or something like that, But I would go with that. And if it wasn't Ronda Rousey, and you know what, I'm going to shut up because I don't want to take anybody's. But go ahead, I'll throw it over to Chris.
I'm on the same wavelength as your Ken, and the name I immediately scribbled down was a veteran of a movie. Her movie has actually appeared on my blog, Ninja's Creed. But Gail Kim, I think Gail Kim would be terrific. Yeah. She's got that Asian exotic thing, and she had no trouble being that woman who automatically has that mysterious background that's never really explained. And I think that would be good. I like the idea of almost a Davos type or trilateral commission type corporation that basically runs the world, and don't even make them aliens. Aliens, I mean, let's not give them a bad name. Let's stick with the people that deserve it, us humans, and make this some like board of 21 that rules the world from a remote island somewhere, And but yeah, my vote is for Gail Kim. And instead of eyeglasses, you could do like an Apple Watch type thing. They're ugly.
Yeah, I was thinking something like that too with the technology that we use. That's good. Yeah. Like everybody's like this with their phone. Let me do it. Yeah. Everybody's like this, Right. So why not like an app where you can see what real people really are?
Yeah,
it's an app for everything.
Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Well, I mean, I was thinking an app as well. So I'm just going to throw that out there right out the gate. Definitely technology is where we're at. So that makes a lot more sense in today's day and age. But as far as a wrestler, I'm thinking Stone Cold.
Yeah, I'm glad I shut up because I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I'm definitely. When Ahoro said The Rock, I was like, Ken's going to say Stone Cold. So I'm like racking my brain trying to think of who else I would get. But Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to see Stone Cold again. I'm sticking with the aliens. I'm traditional. I kind of like the story as it is. I think it makes a lot of sense still. The politics definitely play a huge role. I think They Live is super relatable today. I mean, way too relatable. A lot of people feel we're brainwashed by our brands and things that we watch and listen to and read. And a lot of people feel we're controlled by a lot of that kind of stuff in our mind. And so I feel like it's really relevant still. I wouldn't redo the fight scene. Too epic. No way I'm tackling that. I'm not touching it. Roddy and Keith David did it too well. I wouldn't even touch it. I would try to think of something else, maybe outrageous. Because with Stone Cold, I'm sure we could think of something. If I couldn't, I'm sure he would.
You ever see that movie Condemned? He is
Yes.
awesome. Like something gritty like that, like where he's just beating there's no skill involved. It's just gonna beat the crap out of you, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm in. Yeah, I'm in for that.
So, I mean, yeah, and like as far as like how you would identify the aliens, the invaders, I would definitely, the technology thing, whatever. I was thinking more like phones because, like Ken said, we're attached to our phones, and we're filming everything. I would kind of think that maybe somebody would accidentally, while opening one of their phone cameras, start to see the true identity of maybe some of the aliens while they were filming something else that they should be, reporting, but they're filming it instead. We often see people filming things, and we're like, why are they filming that? But instead of helping somebody, but definitely maybe something would happen while they open their camera and they realize, wait a minute, why am I seeing somebody's, like, what in the world am I seeing through this camera lens? Like, like somehow it would inadvertently expose the identity of some of the aliens or whatever. But yeah, I like the alien overlord idea. I'm a traditionalist there, and I think the politics and some of the whole idea of the propaganda rings true definitely today. So I would stick with that. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I would leave most of the story as it is, but just kind of throw in some tweaks here and there, and maybe update the way of identifying the aliens, and of course Stone Cold in the main role.
So I want to play devil's advocate real quick in horror. I would not want to see The Rock in this role. And the reason why is because I think he's got too much exposure, and it's like all his movies are kind of starting to look the same a little bit. And I thought about The Rock, but you do make a good point about the delivery of lines and how he's a good actor. He really is. But I feel like it's too much of the same. I want to see more Stone Cold. You know what I mean? But that's just me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. I mean, the when I thought The Rock, I thought it was because he could deliver the lines, especially when you have to do the bubble gum line or something to match that. You need somebody who can do that. And Stone Cold, I think, can definitely do that. He does very well at the talking part of wrestling, and that's kind of what you need there. But I would never imagine that The Rock would take a role like this, because he's just seems to be above that at this point. I think he'd be above doing a horror remake. So it just the fun of it and the name there. But yeah, I would either The Rock or Stone Cold. I would love it. We don't have to narrow it down. I mean, it doesn't have to be a wrestler. I mean, there could be other people. But Rowdy made the role, so why not? But I definitely like having a female do it. I didn't even think about that. Shame on me. But that works awesome, and having her kick a guy's ass, I mean, that would definitely fit. We've talked about it before, the changing of women's roles. Her kicking a guy's ass would definitely fit perfectly in this new age that we're going through of women in horror.
Right,
I'm a
right.
woman over here, and I was like, oh man, shame on me too.
Yeah.
Over here, and I'm like, so anyway, Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Stone Cold. I don't
Yeah.
care. He's gonna crack a beer open and start whipping everybody's ass. That's all I care about right now.
Yeah, me and Chris, we're playing politically correct
we're
here,
modern
so
day
yeah.
men, yeah.
It would be awesome to see a woman do it. No, I love it. I love everybody's answers. They were all really great. I'd pay to see any of it.
Yeah,
Any of the scenarios.
Batista would be somebody too if you're looking for something. I don't know, like he's fun, but yeah, good stuff. Horror. Is there anything going on in horror news, real quick?
Yeah, let's run down as usual. Quick few hitters here. As always, I like to bring you guys shark news. There's a new Chinese shark movie that's out called Land Shark. As far as I know, this is only gonna open over there for now. They haven't released U.S. details yet, but looks pretty interesting out, and I believe there's more than one trailer. and the poster's out for that. So definitely look out for that. Uh, American Horror Story, the series. I mentioned that there's going to be a series now. Unfortunately for me, I don't have Hulu, and it looks like it's only going to be on Hulu. Why that is, how that came to be, or whatever, I don't know. Maybe just trying to branch out the name there, but that's a little disappointing. Hopefully, I don't have to get Hulu to watch that, because I'd definitely be interested in seeing that. Let's see, The Witcher season 2. Obviously, filming has stopped, as many filmings have stopped. But it looks like in August they're targeting a return. I didn't quite catch where exactly it is they're filming. It's not here in the United States, as far as I know. But wherever it is, it looks like they're going to start on that. So hopefully we get that sooner than later. I definitely looking forward to watching all of season 1 so that I can see season 2. Then let's see. Kane Hodder has a new movie that just came out on Amazon. It's called Paralyzed with Fear. This is a low budget film. I didn't finish. I started it, but it's definitely a low budget film. But I know he has a relationship with the guy who wrote and directed this, and that's why he kind of did it. But it is on Amazon for those who love Kane and just want to sit back and watch him in a more of an indie film. Some other films that we are going to be supporting. The posters and trailers are out now. One is called Archive. It's kind of a sci-fi / horror, and that'll be on demand and digital on July 10th. Another one called Ghost of War, and that's out now, I believe, on DirecTV, and will also be out on demand July 17th. And finally, for I guess those who are watching us live, can get the benefit of that. Yummy is coming to Shudder on Thursday. I checked that out and put a review out. Pretty good zombie film here. Lots of fun, blood and guts. Definitely worth checking out. Last week I gave a shout out to Scare Package. If you haven't seen that yet, definitely check that out. And also coming to Shudder in July 9th, is another sci-fi. We're doing a lot of sci-fi / horror here. It's called The Beach, and I will be checking out several of those movies and have reviews for them, and we have trailers and posters up on the site already. So that's just a few things in the news and in the works for you guys.
Right on. Excellent segment as well. They Live is one of my all-time favorites, and like Muse said, it's what pretty much why we're here today. It's pretty crazy how things work out. So yeah, let's get into our review of WrestleMassacre with Chris the Creature ZC.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I'm going to do a little review here, and then we're going to go right into talking to some of these peeps who are in the movie, which is kind of exciting. Wrestlers in movies, not new. Andre the Giant, I believe, was in The Princess Bride, if I'm not mistaken, and of course, Andre the Giant was a 7'6" guy. Amazing. But I've even done a couple of movies on my blog. Trish Stratus from Bounty Hunters does a fabulous job in that. And Gail Kim, a very mysterious role in the movie Ninja's Creed. So wrestlers are no straight. And a couple of weeks ago, I did a wrestling movie, The Masked Mutilator. A 90s style movie shot last year. It was a beautiful movie. And then just a couple of days ago, or about a week ago, and I posted it on the blog about a week ago, a WrestleMassacre, which is a movie that we're going to talk about today. We have talked about it already, and we're going to get nitty gritty with the stars. It's a beautiful movie of when passions collide. And the movie has a lot going for it. It has a lot of wrestlers in it. Perhaps not ones you've heard of, because like any sport, there's like different circuits. And there's a very regional circuit on the Northeast, and a lot of these guys are in that circuit. And a guy named Richie Acevedo fights as the Cuban, what's his name? The Cuban Assassin. Wonderful name for a wrestler. It's interesting. Richie Acevedo is the protagonist or antagonist, however you describe him, in this movie. And he's almost like a throwback to 1970s wrestling. If you're as old as I am, you used to put on the UHF station on Saturday morning, and Vince McMahon would come on in a straight roll, and he'd BMCing Chief J. Strongbow, Haystack Calhoun, George the Animal Steel, and Richie Acevedo in this movie seems to come right out of that era. And we'll ask these guys some questions a little later, which will add to this interview. So I won't quite go into that, but Randy, played by Richie Acevedo, and he looks like a wrestler. He's a landscaper in this movie. Awkward, socially awkward, no doubt about it. Pretty good landscaper. He had ambitions about being a wrestler, following in his dad's footsteps. His dad was a great one, but all the intangibles that you need to have, sort of a business savvy to you, sort of an intuition. He doesn't have any of that, and he doesn't make it. He's not going to make it, and so he's a landscaper. One day, his landscaping job comes to an end because he does what a lot of us guys would do. He just happens across a window, and through the window, there's a large-breasted woman all naked and lathery in the shower, and he's watching her. Well, the husband catches him, reports him to the boss, he's fired. But before getting fired, he actually made an impression on a number of people, including the very lovely Becky, played by, who won't be with us today. And I got to talk to you about that, Ken, because she's really good looking. But Becky is played by Rosanna Nelson. She hails from Pennsylvania, not too far from us. And she takes, I don't know if you want to say pity, but she actually respects the guy. Realizes he's a human being, talks to him like a human being. She's got a worthless dirtbag husband. You can see he's a smooth talker, but after you've known him for 10 minutes, it's just slime. All that smoothness becomes slime, and you just want to take a shower. Well, unfortunately, she married him, and she's stuck with him. And but the husband tells her a few lies, and they end up firing Randy too. Randy says, "Oh, maybe this is a sign. Maybe there's a demon in this movie too." We won't even talk about the demon, but I need to be a wrestler. Maybe this is telling me I need to be a wrestler. So he takes his life savings, big wad of bills, goes to a wrestling school, and you'll recognize some of these people there. We're going to have to ask him how they got some of these people. But he goes, and he's all gung-ho about becoming a wrestler. He gets totally humiliated, not just physically, but by the people, the administrators and the instructors at the wrestling school, and something snaps. And what follows is carnage. Basically, everybody you see on the screen from here on out is going to die horribly, get pulled apart horribly, get their thumbs pulled out, get their faces pulled off, get their innards pulled out. The gore is going to jump right at you, and it's not going to let up. And by the way, I know, Haro, that you have said this many times. We have all been waiting for a movie to come out where we see a midget just get body slammed. And we actually see that here. And it is such a beautiful thing. Now this midget, unlike Tattoo and Fantasy Island, this midget has it coming, and we cheer. But do you know they used to have midget wrestling? You go back to the 50s and 60s and 70s, they used to have midget wrestling. I forget the names, but I remember seeing them. Can you picture that today? No way. Oh boy, now it's I don't know. It's pyrotechnics and 3D and special effects. But this guy, he has snapped. He's going on a bloody rampage. He's going to kill former employers, former customers. He's going to kill family members. And unfortunately for Becky, her worthless dirtbag, slimy husband has got her into a lot of trouble. He owes a crime organization a lot of money, and they're coming to collect, and they want to collect, and they've said, hey, if you don't pay up, we're going to hurt your wife. And so now Randy's in a position where he could also be a chivalrous maniac, because Becky is going to need protection. You can see where it's all going to come full circle. The question is all of Randy's humanity gone, or does he have enough left to, oh, I see the dirtbag Owen is with us. Oh, I'm kidding. But or does he have enough humanity left to protect her and to save her, or is that all gone? And we'll see. And then the ending is going to be, I don't know if you want to say ironic, twist, or whatever, but it is a wonderful B movie. And I say that, as much as I've been ragging on Owen the character, the actor who plays him, Julio Bana Fernandez, he does it magnificently. And so I am not going to talk too much more about the movie because I don't want to give away any spoilers, and I want to get right into our discussion with them, and that is WrestleMassacre.
Hey, Richie. Hey, Julio. Thanks for joining the show where the scary things are. I'm the host, Monster Mash Ken. We're really excited to have you on. Chris was just finishing up his review. Richie, I know you jumped in a little bit early. I was trying to message you and you dropped out, but I'm glad you're here. Julio, thank you so much for joining us as well. My co-host, Chris Horo from Florida, and Muse, she is also on as well. So, yeah, let's just jump right into an interview with you guys. Richie, man, you killed it. Literally, brother. Loved watching you in this movie. So many great scenes. You really brought, God, man, all I have pictures in my head is you holding the belt up. You know what I mean? And then you had the nerve to give it a little kiss as well. But so I guess I want to talk about how you guys got involved with the movie. Julio, why don't we start with you? What was your involvement with this?
So I had worked with Brad on a previous film called Killer Campout, and he approached me about WrestleMassacre more of as an idea, as an expansion on something he had done in the past, because he made a WrestleMassacre short film as part of an anthology previously. And I was super excited right away. I mean, horror, backyard wrestling style, it just sounded awesome. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of wrestling background, so I knew my role was going to be kind of limited from the get-go, but that's why I was like, Brad, anything you need, just get me on set. I don't care. I'll hold the mic. I'll, doll people up with makeup as best I can. I'll, whatever you need. I want to do this.
Yeah, well, your role, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, and Muse, my co-host here, she said that, you really got under her skin because, that means you did a really good job because you played such an asshole in this film. And I got to ask you one question before. So there was a scene with you and Tony Atlas, and he's like, he's got you right up, and I don't know if you were like terrified and you were laughing, if you were scared, and he's like smacking you around a little bit. Talk to me about the intensity of that scene real quick.
Well, first off, Tony is, I think he was 72 when we shot this, and he is still an absolute monster.
Yeah.
He is a gigantic human, so he's pretty intimidating, and yeah, he is also hilarious. I mean, he comes from that old school style of wrestling where it's like, give me the gist of the scene and, let me go. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that stuff he just pulled out of nowhere. So a couple times he did catch me laughing, but it was a lot more of trying to be like that nervous, scared. And yeah, he was hilarious.
Yeah, I've met him randomly at a convention. He is huge, man. He's like, come here, man. He grabbed, like he was being gentle, but he just like pulled me over to him, and I was like, ah. So I think Richie's having a little bit of audio difficulties there. So Richie, as soon as you're good to go, just hit that unmute button and jump right on in, and we'll talk to you a little bit. But I'm going to throw it over to Chris. Richie, you good? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys now. It takes me a while to figure this new technology out. I'm not used to this new type of technology, so my apologies. I'm a little bit older than these other guys in this movie.
That's all right, because you could kick all their asses as you did.
only with my cane.
So before I pass it on, I just wanted to ask you first, Richie. Thank you so much for joining us and hanging out with us tonight. Julio talked about his involvement and how he got involved in the movie. How did you get involved in the movie? And obviously you're the star of the movie. You did such an awesome job. So talk to me about that.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. How I got started was, you want to know how I got into the movie itself? Excuse me, sorry about that. WrestleMassacre, or how I got started in acting, or just WrestleMassacre itself?
We could talk about WrestleMassacre, then your background, coming up.
With WrestleMassacre, when I started get into the film work, decided to do more acting.
Mm-hmm.
I had submitted for an audition or to get into a movie called MILFs vs. Zombies, which was one of Brad Twigg's film projects. Mm-hmm. That's how I met with Brad Twigg. But strangely and oddly, I did not know how much of a wrestling fan that Brad actually was. Mm-hmm. I had no clue that he was this big wrestling fan. And he started talking about wrestling with me from day one. He kept telling me about this idea that he'd like to make a wrestling horror film. He kept talking to me about it. We'd done a few film projects, like we did a small little thing for 60 Seconds to Die with wrestling. Then we did another one with a segment for Frames of Fear, and the first Frames of Fear, it was titled WrestleMassacre itself in that little segment. And then he decided he wanted to do a feature-length film, so I wanted to make his dream come true because he's the first one to actually bring me on to a film project when I started acting. But I liked Brad, and I liked his idea, and I wanted to make his dream come true and help him. So I decided to go along with him and to do it. And it was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun in itself. But the biggest challenge, if you see through the film, was I was trying to keep myself on a simple diet, but the way the filming was and everybody's schedule was, kind of chaotic. So my weight kind of fluctuates a little bit through the film, as you can see.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of a question I wanted to get into before I hand it off. Did you take any real bumps? I mean, obviously you had a couple matches in there that you're beating the hell out of everybody, but sometimes, when what's his name, Oogie Boogie or Boogie, you're wrestling the older teacher, you're wrestling, you're in the ring. Did you take any real bumps?
Yes, all my stunts were real. All my bumps were real, even on the hard ground, on the grass. All that was all real. That was me taking my own bumps, and even in Boogie's ring, which Boogie's ring is stiffer than most rings I'm in, and it's also smaller.
Uh-huh.
So, but it's a training ring for his students in his Boogie camp there. And I known Boogie for years, though. He wrestled my dad years ago, and I'm talking like in the 70s.
Uh-huh.
So I known Boogie for years. Ran across him on many different shows, and I'm the one that approached him with the idea of having him part of the movie, and to see if we can use his school for the filming. He was happy to do that. Of course, we had to pay him for it, but he gave us a pretty good price on using him, his wife, his school, his students. But we only had like about 4 or 5 hours to be able to do everything in.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, I'm going to pass it on over to Chris, ZC. Chris, go take it away, man. Ask your questions.
Hey, gentlemen, it's an honor to talk to both of you. I reviewed your movie extremely favorably on my blog, and
appreciate that.
You guys did a wonderful job. And the only criticism I had is I probably would have rather seen Gail Kim and Trish Stratus, but that's more of me being a guy than a movie critic. Just kidding. But Richie, when I watched you on the film and when I watched the artwork for the movie in the DVD case, I kept seeing Andre the Giant from the 70s, just the image or the silhouette or your wardrobe, the black tights and the knee pads and the wrestling boots. Were you, because I grew up, I'm the oldest guy here. I grew up watching Vince McMahon on Saturday mornings with Haystack Calhoun, Chief Jay Strongbow, Andre the Giant, George the Animal Steele. And I got the feeling that you were very familiar with these guys.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm probably about as old as you are, because I've been around since 1970. I've been around the wrestling, and I've been around the wrestling business. I actually grew up with pro wrestling as opposed to sports entertainment, which there is a difference. My dad wrestled Andre the Giant. I knew Andre. I met him when I was 5 years old. up in the Maritimes in like 1973 and 1974. Also met like Maurice Mad Dog Vachon, Tokyo Joe. Andre, even though as tall as he was such a nice person for me, and at such a young age, he was so friendly and loved children. The person I was scared to death when I was a kid was Mad Dog Maurice Vachon, because he looked like a serial killer, right? But the image I was kind of going for, to answer your question, there's a lot of emulation of Andre there, but the image I was kind of going for was kind of more Bruiser Brody in the movie. But it just had my own little personal twist of my own character, the Cuban assassin. Right. You know, so you watch the movie, you're pretty much almost kind of seeing me being me, everyday life. And then all of a sudden you see me being my character, like the Cuban assassin, but I was trying to go more Bruiser Brody. But it's kind of funny because Andre back in the 70s, he would have an afro to make him seem taller. Yeah. Because he wasn't exactly 7'4". Okay. People don't understand that, you know. I mean, you can see pictures with Andre and Wilt Chamberlain and Arnold Schwarzenegger from the Conan the Destroyer movie, and you see that Wilt Chamberlain, you know, he's a tall guy, you know, he's taller than Andre, but Andre would have an afro and make him seem taller. And my dad adopted that from Andre, because my dad would have an afro in the 70s to make him seem a little bit taller. But my dad's like me, only 5'7", and he's in the ring with these guys who are 6 foot plus. So he had to make himself seem a little bit taller. So, but my dad and my uncle, you know, they were actually the first, or Frank, as I call him, my uncle. That's how kayfabe it was back in the day. I actually literally thought my dad's tag team partner was my uncle, but he was no relation. But I still call him Uncle Frank. And you know, but Dad got that from Andre the Giant. But my dad and Frank were like one of the first real high flyers of wrestling, because they were smaller men in the ring with guys who are 6 feet, 6+. And high flying is different than what it is today. You know, it has spots, had their high spots, but it was more fast moving paced, you know, as opposed to a big man moving slow.
Richie, I'm sorry, Chris, I'm just going to interject. I just wanted to introduce Jimmy Flame. Thanks for jumping in, man. Making you played a butthead in the movie, and then you come in and you just butt your way into the interview. I love it, man. That's awesome. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Good, man. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good to go. You're good to go.
Excellent. That's all I was worried about, is whether my microphone was on or not, because this technology, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
Jimmy, I already explained that my part. You and I are old, and we're like old school wrestlers. Really old school.
Right?
Julio's going crazy over there. It's like, come on, just press the button, jiggle the wires already.
Hey, I got to tell you, Julio's a good guy. I don't care what anyone else says. All right?
Hey, Julio earned my respect when he come up with the ladder. A lot of people don't know the ladder scene with between Julio and myself in the movie, and him going through the table. That was all Julio. Now, Brad and I were trying to talk Julio from not doing it. I thought it should have been me falling off the ladder and going through the table. But Julio was dead set that he was going to do this. And he did. We did about 2 or 3 takes. And after the last take, Brad's like, that's it, we're done. And Julio got a nice bruise and everything out of it. So Julio understands what wrestlers go through when people say the word fake. Fake is irrelevant. We're literally putting our bodies in abuse and for people's entertainment, but we do it because we love it. We have a passion for it. We want to perform for them, and we want to make it as believable as possible. There's only one way to be believable, is we got to make body contact. We got to be stiff, snug, you know. And believe me, even though me and Jimmy worked that scene out in the movie there, we did an old school format. You know, if it was going to be stiff, it would have been stiff. There were a couple stiff shots from each one of us, and another one was complaining. We took our bumps on the hard ground, and that was one. That's when I realized Jimmy and I have chemistry. If we just get in a wrestling match, I'm sure we'll tear the house down just with that one match.
Right? I was like, let's just lock up and roll, and then we did.
I love it.
It's pretty. Hey, listen, Jimmy Flame's character in that movie is pretty much Jimmy Flame being himself.
I got that. I was great. It's like definitely a heel, you know, and he's got that persona. And we're Richie, your character. obviously he was evil, he went crazy, but we wanted these people to suffer at the same time, so it was awesome. Chris, I didn't mean to interject
no,
on you.
that's good.
So go ahead, continue your next questions. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's good. I'm glad we got the two big villains here. I gotta tell you guys, when Richie, when you body slammed the midget, something clicked inside me, and I said, "There is goodness in the world." I've been wanting to see something like that since the '70s. I don't know.
My God!
Well, I'm going to tell you, the first midget to be involved with wrestling, and my dad, I've wrestled midgets, I've wrestled women, I've wrestled giants, I've wrestled my own dad, I've wrestled my son, my nephew, best friends, murderers, and so forth. I mean, legitimately, that's absolutely true. I've been in the ring with the most dangerous and with the most mildest people you ever can be in the ring with. I've also wrestled Hollywood superstars too, in that matter. But the thing is I had wrestled a midget years ago in the 90s, and it was in a battle royal, and we got tossed out, both me and the midget. I thought it'd be kind of interesting. Someone throw the midget on me, and I go over. We're both out, eliminated, and then outside, I let the midget just body slam me outside in the concrete. That midget was so happy when we come back in the locker room because, and I don't mean to call him a midget. I would call him by his name. I just can't remember his name. And because he said no one ever let him do that because he was a midget. And what happened is I told my dad about it. My dad's like, I wouldn't do such cartoon things. My dad wanted to be serious. But, Bobby Heenan was doing that with the Little Bruiser in AWA in the 70s. And I didn't understand what was wrong with that. But my dad said he took his character serious. What it is my dad, being 5'7" in a big man's world, wanted to make sure it would show people he was a tough guy. But in reality, what people didn't realize is my dad legitimately was a tough guy. My dad was raised in Puerto Rico, in the streets of Puerto Rico, where he get knife fights, legitimate knife fights. And not only that, but, my dad was a professional boxer before he was a wrestler, so he could legitimately knock anybody out. And the only reason why he got into wrestling was because he was in a match where he beat the living daylights out of this guy, but they gave the guy the win on points, and it made my dad mad. So he went into the field of professional wrestling where he knew everything was controlled. So, but yeah, the midget thing, that was a lot of fun to work with Yoder. Just so you know, that particular guy, Yoder there, he on Monday Night Raw when they had El Toro against the little Irish guy Hornswoggle.
Okay.
And they had the little mini they call the micro commentary team, and he was Micro Cole. That's who he was, Nicholas Yoder. He's a legitimate midget wrestler too, and he's a legitimate wrestler as well.
Good. Hey, Julio, I want to talk to you about Owen. As much as we hated him, I really felt sorry for him, and I almost wanted him to survive because this guy obviously seems to have been a loser his whole life, and he just needs a chance. And there was something about your performance that I said to myself, I know I want him to get pulled apart, but now all of a sudden I want him to emerge. And I won't give any spoilers here, but there was a part of me as the movie got about 3/4 of the way done, and I saw what was happening, that I said, I want Owen to survive. I know he called the Cuban guy a Mexican twice, but there was something, you just know that this guy deserves at least one break in his life. And I thought you did that very well.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, Owen's, like you said, he was one of those guys who was never really a winner. He always strived for it, always took risks, but it always came back to bite him. And he just always, he stepped on the wrong toes. He would ask for favors and not repay them, and he would burn bridges with people who, he relied on those relationships a lot in his life. And once he burned that bridge, he would move on to the next one, and eventually he just ran out of people to ask for help from.
Yeah. We meet those people in real life, and they usually don't fare well either. So you could say it's a very realistic movie. Jimmy, I loved your character because I was telling Richie, I don't know if you were here when I said this, but I saw Richie as a throwback to the 60s and the 70s, giving my age away a little, when my dad used to take me to the Boston Garden to see George the Animal Steele and Haystacks Calhoun. And then you got a very flashy Jimmy coming. He's got the funny sunglasses, the loud sunglasses, and you almost take us into the mid 80s. And I don't know if that was intentional, but it was sort of like old school versus new school. And of course, whenever you see that in these such poetic Shakespearean plots, it never works out well for the new school.
That was just that just happened. Like no one like sat us down and said, we're trying to tell this story of like the clash between 70s and 80s wrestlers and then beyond. It just happened. I mean, I was literally told, handed a script and just said, hey, run with it, be yourself. So you're right. There is a lot of me in that movie. It's not necessarily the guy you'd run into on the street, because I'd like to think that I'm not such a butthole. But I mean, if you
I don't know, Jimmy. I've seen you at a bar.
That's different. If I'm out partying, that's different. But if you hand me the microphone or give me the camera and say go with it, then I'm going to go with it. So that was all more of a stroke of Brad just kind of letting us be ourselves on screen. He had the vision and everything, but he more or less was like, I'm going to get the guys or the people together to help make this happen. And it just happened. And I think, and to your point, I think it was, it worked out well. It definitely worked out well in the end.
Yeah, Brad was the one that got the costume wardrobe for Jimmy to wear in the movie.
Yeah.
Now, and my costume was, when I approached Brad, I asked him, what do you want? You want more of a modern type wrestler? And he was immediately, he goes, no, I want you to be like the old school wrestler. So that's where I came up with trying to emulate a little bit of Bruiser Brody into that character. Brad gave open reins to the wrestlers because that's the best way to work. Wrestlers are one of the best improvs, and people can do things on the spot. Yeah. That's how we're trained. That's how we do our show. That's how the magic unfolds. It's more of an happening than what people realize. There's more realism to wrestling what people actually think. The show is irrelevant. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like tell me what you want. What do you want out of this? Like, what's your end idea? How do you want people to walk away feeling? And that's the most important thing. And I guess wrestlers have this intrinsic ability to do it just by the nature of the profession.
Yeah, and Jimmy and I, we just rolled with that scene. And even though it was the longer fight scene in the film, Renee and I was shorter, and that was because we're losing daylight, and it went from day to night. And that's because I had another movie shoot I had to do, and there was a problem with one of the prosthetics that we were concentrating more on instead of getting the rest of the scene out of the way that we could have gotten done with. But I think the film turned out pretty good. And Brad, one thing people need to understand, Brad was able to put the whole film together and be able to utilize all the mistakes and all the stuff that was going wrong and made it work for him in the movie. Brad was just really good at putting that thing together. So there was a lot of problems that you don't even know, or nobody don't even know except for us that were there. But Brad's the one, when he put the movie together, he put the thing together. You didn't even know there was a problem. He made everything that was working bad. Like at the end of the movie, you see kind of a strobe light effect where I'm getting up with the fog in the background with the bullet hole in my head. Well, Brad's the one who did the bullet hole in my head, number one. Number two, we had a faulty light. It just kept flickering, but we went ahead and filmed anyway. And Brad's words was, he goes, I'll make it work. And he sure did. And at the end of the movie, just the flashing effect, they had to put no visual special effects for the devil bringing me back. The strobe light did the effect for itself. Because the light was just flickering off and on. We couldn't get it to stop, but we went ahead and continued to film, and Brad made it work.
Good. Well, I want to thank on the co-host Omar O'Haro for sending me the movie to watch. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to hand it over to him right now.
Awesome, awesome. So thanks, guys, for joining us tonight. We've talked a lot about wrestling, and I'll probably ask a question about that in a minute. But, this is a horror podcast, so I kind of want to know what your backgrounds is in horror. Obviously, Julio, I see you're wearing a Jason shirt, it looks like. So how big of a horror fans are you guys?
Which one you asking the question to first?
Julio, I guess you go first since you got Jason on.
Let's go, Julio.
Yeah.
And I'll roll with it.
So I grew up with my dad showing me like the classic horrors, like the black and white monster movies. So those have always been my favorites. Getting into slashers, Friday the 13th and Halloween, I really liked. Not so much into the new stuff because I'm not a big overly special effects guy or relying on jump scares. I felt like horror in the past, well, there's like a 10-year period maybe there that I felt like that's all it was. So I wasn't so much into that. And when I started working with Brad, I was a little skeptical, to be honest, getting into a horror film because I wasn't sure what to expect. But when I saw the way he did his special effects, it honestly blew my mind with a lot of the stuff that he did, and I was like, all right, this is a really cool process, and this can like really look more high budget than it actually is. Yeah, and it was just really fun, and the old school horror stuff is definitely my favorite.
Well, just real quick, Julio, go back and listen to some of our older shows because we are real big promoters of indie film and indie horror films. And I'm 100% in agreement with you as far as like the high budget, over the top CGI stuff. But there are some really, really good movies out there that will pucker up your asshole, if you know what I mean. So, Oro, keep going, brother. I'm sorry.
No, I guess either Richie or Jimmy, you guys want to take your take on horror?
I like in terms of acting, like I don't have much of a background in horror acting. Like most of the roles I've done have been like action style or working in television or whatever. But as far back as I remember, I really enjoyed watching like the old Italian films, such as like Cannibal Holocaust and Zombie, stuff like that. Much like the spaghetti westerns as well, because I respect more storytelling than I do like visual screen aesthetic. And a lot of those old movies did a very good job based on the technological limitations that they had back in the day of really concentrating on telling the story. And that's really what draws me in. And even like the more campy stuff, like Slumber Party Massacre 2. I love that movie simply because there's a guy running around with a freaking crazy looking guitar with a drill on the end that he stabs people with. I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but I think that shit's funny. You know what I'm saying? So I guess in another way, I look at horror as kind of like a comedy in its most intrinsic, the interstitial property that comedy is tragedy. You know what I mean? And horror really exemplifies what that is. It's like, there's these tragic set of events. It's comedy though because it's a freaking tragedy. You can't get that back. And when I was asked to do the film, and I was told that it was like this, there's going to be this like crazy freaking like slasher horror type film, I was just all about it, just because. Not that I'm had much experience in terms of being a worker, but I definitely know what it should look like because I've watched enough of this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In my case, I'm kind of like Julio. I grew up watching the old black and white classic Universal horror movies. They call them, monster movies back then. We didn't call them horror movies. And then when we got older, then I've seen Halloween and Friday the 13th. But I'll be honest, I was never a horror fan about horror films at all. I'm more based upon storytelling and drama and suspense and thrillers, because you'll see more of a suspense thriller film that's more frightening than an actual horror film. And that's because they invoke this thing that's called suspension of disbelief. And that's what pro wrestling is suspension of disbelief. That's why people can get heated and believe what they're seeing is real, and they get engaged and try to jump the railing and jump in the ring and attack the wrestlers, and which happened to me several times. I've had people do that, and they really believe that my character was real, and I'm, and everything I'm saying was real. But when I came on Mills versus Zombies, and it's more like Toxic Avenger trauma, with Lloyd Kaufman, which I did watch the Toxic Avenger. I thought was what I call slapstick horror, because it's more comedy, just like Jimmy said, and a lot of other films I started watching as you get older, Chopping Mall and a bunch of other ones, and you start, you look at it from more of a comedy point of view, and but I came on board because I just thought it was going to be a challenge. And one thing is, when you're trying to be an actor, you got to challenge yourself with stuff that you wouldn't like to do, as opposed to what you would like to do. And the more you do things that would be out of your norm, is the challenging roles, which I actually wanted to really do my best job and try to play this type of character, because I found it a real challenge to do this type of movie, because you got comedy, and you got serious nature tones. I mean, you got Rene Dupree plays, someone that suffers from PTSD, and from the military. You also got an alcoholic, his sister, which is Rose, has got an alcohol problem. She's an alcoholic. You got a person that's based upon gambling and borrowing money, like Owen, Julio's part. Then you got my character, which is kind of more down to earth, basic, everyday person you would overlook and wouldn't have nothing to do, which is kind of based on a little kind of bullying and, a little prejudice there too. But, to put those elements and bring them all together and using wrestling and horror to put it together is kind of unique. I just thought it was a really good challenge. I had a fun time working on there and getting to work with everybody in the movie and really seeing, which I already seen Brad, because I already done films for him like Fiendish Fables, Frames of Fear, 60 Seconds to Die. I also done Mills versus Zombies for him. I always seen how he worked, and I really like how he does it on a low budget scale and an indie film thing. And I'm all about indie film because I've wrestled the independents in wrestling, went from the territories and into the independents of wrestling. I've been wrestling for 31 years, and there's a lot of similarities between doing this and wrestling, and I just thought it was a real challenge. But I never, like I said, I'm not really a horror fan, but it's the challenge of the role that I was embedding myself for. And I didn't realize until now, believe me, which I'm thankful, how many people are really interested in this type of film and how well the film has been doing since it's been released since last week. And I'm really impressed and really shocked. But hey, I'm all about doing any type of movie that I can get get a good role and good character and something that's going to be a challenge. And Brad definitely opened the door on challenges.
Well, you in a way kind of answered my second question, which I was going to ask you, Richie, and that is that before we get a lot into the wrestling part and even the horror part of the movie, a lot of the beginning of the movie is building your character and going through, learning about him and his life and his struggles and so forth, even, and then kind of a little bit in the ring. So, was that really challenging? Because I mean, that's all you're very well versed in, obviously, the wrestling and so forth, but you really had to go to your acting there. How was that and dealing with all those scenes before you got to the real fun part?
Well, those scenes, with going to dialogue, which the script, was a kind of fly-by writing thing. We've had several people writing the script, and kind of on the go, because when you're dealing with wrestlers and especially bigger names that we had in the films, Tony Atlas is, Manny Fernandez, you have to work. Like for example, I had dialogue, but I had to work with Nikolai Volkov, with him being Nikolai Volkov, just with him no lines at all. He's just improving. Same thing with Manny Fernandez. Same thing Julio had to do. Julio had lines, but Tony Atlas was just improving. And so doing those type of challenges, those type of scenes and getting the scene to hit off really good. So I had to, keep the dialogue on my part, but also improv with Nikolai and Manny Fernandez. But one of the reasons why I kind of went with the way of the story, like I told Brad, because we were shooting ideas back and forth. I mean, you just don't know how many ideas we went through before we come up with this final resolution on the type of the concept of the movie. But I told Brad, if we're going to do this, we need to make it like an origin, not to make him like he's a hero, because in honesty, he's just a crazy guy who just society kind of makes your own kind of monster. That's what this situation is: the mistreatment from society, the rejection from and him confusing. It's also him, the character Randy, confusing kindness for what it's not, when he thinks that she's interested in him in other ways. So you're seeing, a breakdown in a way, and you're kind of telling a story of an origin in a way. I just told Brad, I just think it makes more sense if you tell an origin type story. I know it's going to be kind of boring a little bit. That's why he started off with the kill, and then little things in between that was kind of humorous and stuff with the wrestlers that we had involved with the film and Boogie's camp and Nikolai. And we actually filmed that scene with Nikolai Volkov in his backyard. That's how kind he was, and that was his actual backyard. But it was challenging to do the dialogue, me trying to keep within a dialogue, but also improvising a dialogue with like Manny Fernandez and Nikolai Volkov. Now with Rose and Julio, it was just, and with Rick German, which Rick German, he was really cool to work with. I've always enjoyed his work. I think he's one of the most people that doesn't get the accolades he deserves, because he's really a good actor. He should be on a lot of big film projects, in my opinion. And I kind of look at him, in a little way of mentorship in these roles, even though he don't agree with me a lot of the other things, but that's neither this or that. But the easy part was doing the dialogue with other people with dialogue. The challenge was keeping within a dialogue with the wrestlers that had no dialogue. Because Nikolai, even though we had a script for Nikolai didn't go by no script. He didn't even study it or look at it. It was just him improv, and the same with Manny Fernandez. There were scripts there for him, but all we did was give them the idea based on what we're doing, and they just went with it. Same thing with Jimmy Flynn. Just went with it,
Well, Nikolai really laid into it, man. He had some great zingers there, and he was talking about your mom and whatnot. I loved it. I was like laughing my ass off. I thought that was hilarious.
That was all Nikolai. That was all him.
That was great.
Yeah, and he was great to work with. It's just a shame that he died a year after we filmed his scenes.
Oh wow!
And and he was really a nice guy. I mean, Brad and I were like two kids when we left his house and we filmed that scene. We're like two kids, two big, as we say in the wrestling business, big marks. We're just marking out for him, because before I went into wrestling, I was watching him on TV.
Yeah.
And I was watching him on Georgia Championship Wrestling and World Championship Wrestling, and here he's this tough Lithuanian Russian beating the crap out of people, and all of a sudden they were pushing him. Then he was gone the next week because he was working for Vince McMahon the following week, and so but heck, he did great for Vince, and he did great for himself in life. I think he was a nice guy. I really enjoyed him. I also knew Manny Fernandez for years, though. He knew my dad. He knows my dad. And Manny and I, was pretty cool, but I've known him for years. And that was the first time I met Jimmy Flame. But heck, Jimmy Flame and I became good friends after working on this film. He's going to come down and do my next movie I'm going to do, and I'm going to get him in the ring with me just for a little bit in a battle royal scene. Hopefully he'll have fun doing that one.
Well, we can't forget to mention the Sandman himself, yes. Jim. He was one of my favorite ECW wrestlers, just hardcore, and he gets the beer and he slams it with his head, and I love it, man. Definitely got to give it up to Sandman. Horo, what else you got?
Just in time for that, baby.
Cheers.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.
What kind of beer are you drinking?
So every show I introduce a new beer, and this is
Okay.
this is a Einstock. This is Icelandic beer. It's
Okay.
it's really good. It's a white ale with berry flavored summer beer. Definitely highly recommend this
Nice.
beer.
I've
Yeah,
got
Ken's
I've
got the artsy
I've got a
fartsy
Miller
thing.
Lite. It's a fine Pilsner beer.
Yeah.
I think it's brewed in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's got some berry taste
Yeah.
to it, but I mean, you have to eat an actual berry to get the taste out of it.
I get it. That's why you got
You know,
the C on your hat for classy because you keep it classy. I get it.
Because
I
I'm
get it.
classy. It's not
Yeah.
because I play baseball or anything. It's because
If you want to try some beer, I live in the state of West Virginia, and it's one of the homes of many monsters. We got the Flatwoods Monster, we got the Bat Boy, we got the Mothman, which is the most famous one. It was the first appearance of the Men in Black and the Grinning Man. But they got beer here called Mothman beer. You should try some of the Mothman beer.
When I make my way out to West V, man, I'll definitely hit you up. And I've tried beers I've had so many different types of weird beers, but
I'm a beer drinker. I love drinking beer. So.
We are on the right show, man. Talking horror, talking wrestling, talking beer. That's what we're about. Horror. What else you got?
I guess I just had one. We've talked a lot about wrestling. I was kind of curious. Did you guys, obviously, Richie, you sound like you've done plenty of wrestling, but for the other guys, did you guys do any behind the scenes wrestling in between takes, or wrestle, or maybe get involved with some of the wrestlers that were on set, just messing around and so forth?
Julio definitely fought Tony Atlas. I know there's footage there somewhere.
I know for a fact that Julio had some wrestling matches behind the scenes, and I'll let him talk about it. But,
Yeah, it was honestly just working with pros like Tony Atlas and Richie. You're just trying to keep up with their pace pretty much the whole time, especially when like Tony's improving. And then just as far as the actual wrestling was going, just taking their advice. We had no stunt people for this at all, so everybody took their own bumps. When I was doing my scenes with Tony in between takes, we were talking about how to keep yourself safe when you're taking bumps and everything like that. Richie again kind of guided me through the table scene, which is actually my favorite. As soon as Brad said we were doing this movie, I was like, all right, tables, ladders, chairs have to be in there at some point. But then of course, when we're on top of the ladder, Brad's got the camera on the other side of the ladder facing me, and he turned into my dad for a second. He was like, "You don't have to do this. You really don't have to do this. We'll find another way. If you're not comfortable, we can find another way." I was like, "Stop saying that. You're going to make me not want to do it."
that's the mark of a professional right there, though.
So yeah, I mean, it was definitely just talking to these pro wrestlers and getting their advice and just taking their advice.
Well, you obviously gave them advice on where to shop for their wardrobes, because you must have been at Abercrombie or Hollister or something with your outfit. I noticed.
Oh no, that was all Julio's outfit. That's just Julio, man.
I think Julio showed up with the freaking windbreaker that I wore.
Yeah, Julio just showed up. He was already in costume and wardrobe. He just shows up. I had to take my clothes off, man.
I know. I was like, what is that? What's that blue thing you got in your back seat? And he's like, oh, it's just a tracksuit. I'm like, let me check it out. You know what?
Polos and tracksuits.
I want to wear this for the movie.
And me, the real horror of the movie is me running around half naked in the movie. I mean,
You're a brave man. You're a brave man.
And that's why my wife had to turn the lights off, when we were together. So I mean,
oh no, dude.
Then when she turned the lights on, it was divorce time. So I mean,
just imagine Richie walking out, right, in his wrestling trunks, and just saying, "Ta-da!"
Yeah. I can imagine if there was any reported Bigfoot sightings in that area, it was probably when we was filming and I was running around through the woods there. So.
We did have a couple of cold days of shooting.
Oh gosh, yes. There was cold days, there were hot days that we shot, and there was aggravating bug days too. So,
right.
Bet.
Awesome.
Well,
Awesome.
sorry, go ahead, Cora.
No, I was just gonna thank you guys for coming on, and I'm gonna let Muse take over unless Ken wanted to say something.
No, I was just gonna say we have one more host, and she's kind of quiet over here, but she's the main host. Muse, go ahead and take it away.
Hey guys. So
Hey, Muse.
yeah, I mean, I'm over here just soaking it all up. I've been laughing my butt off. I have my microphone muted, but I've been dying laughing for most
I
of
didn't
it.
even know you were here.
I'm here. I'm like the phantom voice in the room, haunting the interview here. So I'm going to start off with Julio, and I feel like I need to redeem myself because Ken threw me under the bus in the beginning of the episode.
What?
Yeah, he threw me up. He's like, oh, or no, it might have been Chris. It was one of them. And yeah, you played your part so well. I loved it. You did a great job. But I was like waiting for your death scene, definitely for sure. But you did a great job. I loved it. You played your part to the hilt. And I wanted to start out by asking Julio, the scene, Ken touched on it briefly, the scene with Tony Atlas. And I wanted to ask you, how much of that, I mean, how many times did you have to reshoot that scene? Because I swear I saw you starting to lose your composure a little bit, laugh. I saw that and I'm like, Tony's got him up against the wall going, please, don't pay him. or please.
I was gonna say, don't pay.
Don't pay. And I seen Julio just trying to keep his face straight, and I'm just like, he's struggling. So how many times did you have to reshoot that? Was that one take, or was that like, okay, let's start again? I got to do this again.
I think we only had 2 or 3 takes for that one because Tony actually, we shot that while he was at a wrestling show. So we shot 2, MCW wrestling show. And we had 2 scenes with him. The first one, he, was before his match, but that scene was actually after his match. So he came back and he was pouring sweat and he smelled terrible. And after we did the first take, Brad yelled cut and he turned around and said, "Brad, you got a breath mint? My mouth smells like a dog done shit in it." So that was between takes 1 and 2. So that was going through my head also while we were shooting. And I was like, oh my God. So it definitely took a couple of times. We didn't have a whole lot of time with him because, he was making fan appearances and stuff at the show as well. But it was a struggle.
It was actually 2 takes. I remember because when Brad cut him off and then he said his breath smelled like shit and he needed a breath mint or whatever. He also told Brad, look, man, don't stop us because when we're told to go, we know what to do. And I remember the next take that was it. And so it was just 2 takes.
Well, that leads me to my next question for Jimmy. You were talking so much trash in the movie, and I freaking loved it. Your character was great. So how much of that was ad-libbed and how much of it was it scripted? Did you just grab the mic and just start going like you said?
Like I said before, I had a script, but I didn't necessarily go by it. It was more or less like, how do you want the audience to feel when I'm done talking or while I'm talking, and I'll get you there. And that's pretty much what it was. And that was, it was pretty much just, I don't know, if I was yelling at somebody on the street, that's probably what I would do.
Loved it. I love that. That's like, that was all. Yeah, we talked a little bit about, you guys talked a little bit about, that's basically your personality. And I loved it. I was dying laughing, and he was a great character, great heel character, along with Owen's character, kind of like, the anti-hero at the end there. I like how Owen kind of like came back, was, kind of trying to get back in there and save the day and things like that. So, we kind of touched a little bit on Julio's most difficult scene. Definitely, I think probably the ladder scene, possibly. So, Jimmy? What was your most challenging scene that you went through while you were filming WrestleMassacre that comes to mind?
Let me answer for you. It's got to be eating the mayonnaise or the mustard.
So the scene where I'm like chugging food, that was actually easy. I did that just out of boredom. I was bored on set. We're filming another scene. I was standing in the kitchen, and I'm just like, dude, let me do something. And they're like, all right, take the camera over there. And I did that, and it ended up in the movie. But in terms of like difficulty, I don't know if there was a difficult scene, but I would say that when the scene came up where I was to wrestle Richie, Cuban Assassin, I gotta say, like I was not that I was nervous, but I wanted to do a very good job for Richie, just because I know his history. I respect the guy immensely. I respect the art of professional wrestling immensely, and I wanted to do a very good, like I at least wanted to justify, like have a justifiable wrestling scene with the guy. So I was a little bit nervous about the fight scene in terms of like getting it, just getting it down. You know what I mean? Because the guy, like, to me, is like, I'm a veteran of professional wrestling, but Richie is like a super veteran of professional wrestling because he's got years on me. You know what I mean? So I really wanted to do a good job for him. I mean, I wasn't nervous or anything like that, but definitely the pressure was on for me to personally feel like I did a justifiable job in my character and fighting with him in that whole scene.
I definitely, and that was a great fight with you guys. I mean, you definitely were going at it pretty good. So I'm going to ask Richie. We obviously Richie, you snap in the movie and start just massacring killing everybody, which I loved. I'm a huge horror fan. I love the gorier the better, and this movie delivered just tenfold. I couldn't believe what I was watching, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. So how much fun was that for you, Richie? I mean, that looked so much fun, just squashing stuff. There's blood splattering everywhere. I mean, you're covered in just all kinds of God knows what. You're making championship belts out of human flesh. It was great. So how much fun did you have filming that? Were you like, I don't know about this? Like, what were your thoughts on doing the really out of control scenes where you're just basically massacring everybody?
Well, no, that was the fun part of the whole movie,
Yeah.
to be honest.
It's like every boy's dream to become a professional wrestler. Like, I want to squash someone's head, literally.
Brad asked me, he said, hey, you don't have a problem having a little bit of blood on you? I said, no, I don't have no problem having blood on me at all. I'm a professional wrestler. There was a scene there where it was a cold day. We was filming. You can't tell it was cold. And
you can tell through your shorts.
Yeah, I'm in my wrestling trunks. Yeah. Basically underwear out there, and I'm throwing the rock on Owen's head, and they had this big cannon, this cannon gun that's supposed to shoot the blood up on me. Well, it didn't work the way they wanted to, but it did such a good impact. The blood just squirted right up on me, and that water was freezing. That blood was the blood was freezing cold. It was colder than what it was outside, and I mean, and that face you see me make when after I sit there and I'm like, it's me really getting like pissed off because that water was so freaking cold. I was like, are you kidding me? You just shot me with freaking ice cold water. It's like felt like ice cold water and it's all blood. But I thought it was fun doing those type of scenes and trying to rip a leg or an arm or squashing someone's head where I almost slipped and fell because wrestling boots aren't really designed for any wet surfaces. So
no, they're not. No, they're not.
You can bust your ass. Like if someone's outside the ring rolling on the cement floor and they're sweaty, you happen to step on there and no one didn't clean that sweat spot up, you're sliding, you're busting your ass right there with wrestling boots on. But I'll answer the question about the scene that was difficult for me to do was ripping the girl's nipple. That was
that was hard for me to watch. I'm just gonna say.
Listen, that poor girl, and I got props to her, and listen, Brad is one to know that I'm Southern raised. I'm raised by my mom. My dad was always wrestling, so I'm always taught to respect women in every single way. I mean, like Brad wanted me to do a rape scene. I was like, no, I'm not going to do no rape scene. That would probably kill the movie. And plus I have respect for women. I don't want to promote that type of violence. And then he come up with ripping the nipple off. I said, well, that's not bad. I can do that. But I was very uncomfortable with the scene because I didn't know what he wanted, but he actually had me grab her tit and had to pull the nipple off. And the first time I grabbed it, man, there was fingerprints, like bruised fingerprints on her. We had to take cut and take makeup and cover it up so you couldn't see him because you could see him. And I kept apologizing every time I had to do the take. But Brad knows when you're uncomfortable, he's going to take it an extra mile. He's like, let's do this one more time. Let's take another take, and how many more takes got to take just grabbing the tit? I mean, really, come on. And
right.
Brad was like amusing himself, seeing how comfortable I am. And then he finally gets to the nipple part, which is another hard thing to do on that, because it's prosthetic, on there. And that girl, all the girls in this movie, I have to give kudos to. I mean, they really put themselves above and beyond, and in this movie, and to allow, someone like me to have to, touch them in any type of way. It's, very, I mean, it's just, it was unbearable sometimes for me. And, but that they were all sports about it, and I'm really grateful. I ain't got nobody suing me over the movie, but
No, you're good. You're good, Richie.
Yeah, that was an uncomfortable scene. The scene with me and Jimmy, that was natural. Like he said, we just went with it, and Brad was following us along because we're starting off at one point in the yard, and we're end up to the swimming pool, and then a little bit further away from the swimming pool, and it's like it just made sense to staying in one place fighting. We just kind of moved and graduated to here, like you would be in a wrestling ring, because you wouldn't be just staying in the center of a wrestling ring. You'd be all over the place.
Right. And it was like we had to stop to get him to have the camera follow us. I remember that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, hold on a second. Get your camera over here, man. We're about to do something cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Brad was like, I didn't know you guys were going to move.
Right.
It was like, I mean, of course we're going to move. Wrestling. We utilize everything. If we can it's on the spot, and you got to really, know to work with somebody and to trust them. And we get to the pool, and then dunking his head in the pool, we're only going to get a few takes out of that. And once I put his face in the pool and pulled it out, and we had to do another take, because the first thing Jimmy says, "Oh, it's fucking cold."
Right? Dude, that was freezing. I was like, I wasn't even trying to do another take, but they were like, "Do it again." All right, fine, let's go.
They were messing with you. They were messing with you for sure. I'm positive.
I'm down with it. It's like, but I almost think I have a little impatient side inside of me where it's like I want to get it done. You know what I'm saying? But it's also at the end of the day, let's do it. Let's get it right. Let's just give him enough material to work with.
Yeah, that's Brad. That's Brad though. Brad will go the extra mile, even though he knows it's uncomfortable. And when you're looking at Brad, and he knows that it's uncomfortable to you. He's over there with the big smile on his face, like a kid on Christmas.
Right? He's like, do it again. Do it. No, man. All right, fine. Do it again. All right, Richie, grab my head. Let's do this again.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, I think the inevitable question Horo asked about your guys' favorite horror movies. So I'm going to go the obvious route and ask you guys your favorite wrestlers and your favorite wrestling maneuvers. I'm a huge wrestling fan. I've been following it since I've just been a small child, huge fan. And so I'm going to start with Julio again. And Julio, who was your favorite wrestler and what was your favorite finishing move?
So I really respect all of the old school wrestlers, but personally, I was a fan of very acrobatic wrestlers. So my top two were Jeff Hardy and Rey Mysterio. The Jeff Hardy Twist of Fate and the Swanton Bomb. Oh my God. Just find somewhere as high up as you can go and jump on somebody with your head.
I got really into Lucha Underground for that very reason.
Yes.
Network, and I love those choices. It's so exciting to watch. I'm old school too, for sure. I definitely watched a lot more wrestling at 10 or 15, 20 years ago. I'm not going to reveal my age, but I'm slightly younger than some of the individuals here, maybe.
Very slight.
That's zero clues whatsoever.
Right. So Richie, who were some of your favorite wrestlers and what were some of the moves they did that you really loved?
Well, you're talking to a guy that's been around since the pyramids. So, I mean,
slightly older than me.
Yeah. You say 15, 20 years ago, but 15, 20 years ago, pro wrestling was already gone. It was sports entertainment. And pro wrestling ended in 93 when AWA closed their doors, when Vern Gagne went down. And everything else from that was just sports entertainment from that point. Now, if you people, when I was growing up, you have to understand, I was around my dad for the first few years. So my dad was my first favorite wrestler, the original Cuban Assassin. But as I was getting older, and I had friends and stuff, we watched wrestling. I would cater to, Tully Blanchard was one of my favorites because he was the all-time heel and the only horseman that never was a baby face.
Yeah.
You know, and I always liked the heels better than I did the baby faces. I
Me
like
too.
Nature Boy. Yeah, I like Nature Boy Ric Flair. You know, I like the antagonist. You know, because I say things, and I have to watch what I say sometimes, or someone will shoot me or punch me in the face. You know, I probably deserve it. You know, because people can take me out of context, and I can say something that really sounds like a derogatory thing, and I'm not really meaning to be. It's just a wrestler in me and the heel in me, and you know, but I grew up with Tully Blanchard, Nature Boy Ric Flair, and as I grew up with Hulk Hogan. I liked Hulk Hogan. You know, my character emulates a lot of Hulk Hogan, Gorgeous George, and my dad. And I also put a little bit of Tully Blanchard and Ric Flair in the mix. My favorite finisher, you know, always, you know, loved the figure 4 leg lock. And I kind of created my own leg lock, which is called the Cuban leg lock, which is, you know, something similar but kind of reverse. You have to see some of my matches on YouTube to see me perform that with Mike Morgan and Steve Ramsey. And then I also do the elbow drop off the top because I like Macho Man Randy Savage, you know.
Yeah.
And plus I kind of emulate a little bit of him, kind of wild, crazy, over the top. And a commentator called it the Cuban Missile Crisis on one of the TV programs.
That's gold.
And my elbow drop, yeah. My elbow drop got called, it was no name, just called it a Cuban Missile Crisis. And normally what I do is I set up for a guy and I have him move. I come off the top, he moves. And the commentator in this one TV program is like, the Cuban Missile Crisis had been averted. The Cuban Missile Crisis had been averted. And that's what they started calling that, my elbow, the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's like, are you going to do Cuban Missile Crisis? And I'm like, well, of course I am. I always miss. It never hits, you know. I mean, I only landed the elbow once. And that's because the promoter wanted me to. And he actually let me finish with that maneuver. And I was like, that's kind of odd. You know, that's not my routine, but if that's what you want, I'll do it. I'm like, I prefer if the guy moved, you know. So, and, you know, because I like missing when I come off the top, because I think I set up and that's the people off their feet and they're like cheering for that baby face to start kicking my ass, you know, and getting to see those fans really cheer. I never knew that me getting the ass whipping would actually make people happy. So I was like, and you know, WrestleMassacre, you know, as you said, you know, Randy's kind of an anti-hero in a way, and so does Owen. Owen, when he gets killed, the thing I liked about Owen's character is how he died. You know, he was a cocksucker in the beginning, and he died as a cocksucker, and he just smiles and laughs, and I'm like, what are you laughing for? And he's like, because my brother-in-law is going to kick your ass.
Yeah. I love it. Yes, I love that last line. He got that last dig in there.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things from someone I killed in the movie. And because he actually had something to say at the end.
Yeah.
You know, before he died, he actually got the smile on his face when I killed him. The only person that had a smile on his face when I killed him was Julio. And but the character, that was one of my favorite lines in the movie. He's like, you know, I'm like, he's like laughing. He's going to die. So what else is he going to say? He's going to insult me. He knows he's going to die. So he's like, you know, he's laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing about? Because my brother-in-law is going to kick your ass. It's like, that's where everybody was hoping Renee would be the one, which Renee did kick my ass. And every time I wrestle Renee in the ring, he always kicks my ass. That's more of a shoot too. I mean, we're in there stiff and everything, like the Von Erichs and the Freebirds, you know. And I remember one time being on tour in Canada with Renee, riding a ring truck, and the referee's like, man, I don't get it. I see you and Renee are like best friends, you know, at the house, but when you guys at the shows, like you guys hit each other's guts. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, I mean, you guys were sitting there laying it. I thought you guys were really mad at each other, beating the hell out of each other. I looked over at the guy and I was like, what are you talking about? I was fighting for my life and I was losing, you know, and I mean, that's the whole thing, you know. I mean, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, I was fighting for my life to get away from Renee. You thought that was fake. I was trying to get away. I was like, you know, that's just how some wrestling can be sometimes. And competitiveness, it could be a real shoot sometimes, work shoot as we call it. And And Renee was wonderful in this movie. I think Renee did a tremendous job acting wise, and of course, he's such a big guy and strong individual, and I've known him since he was 5 years old. So, but yeah, Renee, I think everybody did a wonderful job in this movie.
They did. I knew when I saw Renee's character show up as Sean, it was going to be a knockdown drag out there at the end between you two, for sure. And I loved it. So I'm going to ask Jimmy. We're going to swing back to you. And who were some of your favorite wrestlers, and what were your favorite maneuvers by them?
Well, in terms of like favorite wrestlers, definitely Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Yeah.
Like when he came off the top of the cage, like I was sold. Like I didn't care like what wrestling was at that point. I was just like, this dude just climbed to the top of the cage and jumped off of it and splashed this dude. Like, and the crowd just like went nuts. And I was just like, I love it. Like whatever it is, I love it. And of course, Jackie Fargo is a favorite of mine. He was like kind of a brawler guy from Tennessee. Johnny Valentine, love that dude. Greg Valentine's father. I just loved his style. It was just I don't know. It was just like rambunctious wrestling. And there's a video of him in the Crusher that you can look at on YouTube. That I always tell people, I was like, if you want to understand like the psychology of professional wrestling, find Johnny Valentine versus the Crusher. It's literally like 13 minutes of nothing, and the crowd is just going absolutely bonkers.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And then of course the Crusher, Milwaukee's finest. Like the Crusher is another one. And if you want to lump a bunch of guys together, basically, if you're in the Chicago archives and you're on black and white film, I'm probably a huge fan of you as well. I love all of this stuff. And in terms of like newer, wrestlers, there's a lot of talent in AEW. My buddy Matt Sells has been trying to get in AEW, and I gotta say, if Cody Rhodes doesn't sign him, he's an idiot. Straight up, sign Matt Sells. If you don't sign Matt Sells, you're a freaking idiot.
I got Tony Schiavone's. Tony Schiavone.
Tony Schiavone's got his back. I think he even called one of his.
Tony Schiavone.
Yes. I exchange messages every now and then with him, but yeah, I'll have to put in a good word. Cody's doing awesome things at AEW. I'm a big fan of AEW.
Don't you mean Big C?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes, sign Matt Sells. If you don't, you're an idiot.
There we go. It's going viral. Hey, listen, guys. First and foremost, on behalf of Where the Scary Things Are, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. We love talking wrestling, love talking horror movies, and just getting to know you three. We are sorry Brad couldn't make the show, but listen, we look forward to seeing what you guys have next. If you guys just want to really quick, just tell us where we can find you on social media, and we'll let you be on your way.
Mine is just my full name, Julio Banya Fernandez, JuliOBanafernandez. I know that's long, I'm sorry. But it's just my full name, everything, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, website. Mm-hmm. Easiest way to get to me.
Well, I'm on 2 different Facebook pages under my real name, Richie Acevedo. I'm also on Twitter at Cuban_assassin2. You can check my YouTube channel out at Cuban Mano, actual number 2, both one word, Cuban Mano, the actual number 2. I'm also on Snapchat as Richie Acevedo. I'm also on Instagram as Richie Acevedo. So I'm not a hard person to really find, and I do try to interact with everybody, but I seem to deal with a lot more morons than I do actual real people. But that's all my my social media accounts that you can see me at there.
Right on.
And I'm on Twitter at JimmyFlame77. Go to Twitter, follow me at JimmyFlame77. I'm also on Facebook. Just look up JimmyFlame77. That's 77. And on Instagram at Flame Jimmy, which is my name backwards because I was an idiot, put my name backwards when I first signed up. So at Flame Jimmy on Instagram. I also run a couple websites. One's thinkslinger.org. That's thinkslinger.org. And also my business page is Flames thename.com. That's plural flames, thename.com. Yeah.
Listen, guys, we wish you nothing but success with the film. Hopefully, there's a sequel in the future. We definitely love to see Randy come back and kick some more ass now with the aid of the devil.
But for now, everybody needs to go out there and get a copy of WrestleMassacre. You can also, I think it's on a video on demand.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's live yet, but I know that there was some issues with that, but it's going to be on video on demand. Get your copy and watch it.
Yeah, get your copy and tell Tony Schiavone, your buddy, to get a copy and watch it.
I gotcha.
I know for a fact that Matt Sells has already bought a copy of WrestleMassacre because he sent me a picture.
Yeah.
You got it, guys.
Thank you guys for having us.
Have a good night,
You
guys.
guys are a blast.
Thank you.
Keep it scary.
Thank you guys very much.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All right, what an awesome interview. Those guys were a riot, nonstop. I wish we had more time to talk horror and wrestling. But yeah, let's bring it on home. Thanks for hanging out with us, you guys. I know it was a long show, but check out WrestleMassacre. It was definitely a good film. I liked it. It really reminded me of Die You Zombie Bastards a little bit. Did you guys get that a little bit? But yeah, definitely liked it. So let's go around the horn. Muse, let's start with you first. You have any shout outs this week?
No, I don't. So for once, no, I just want to say thanks to everybody that's been checking out our YouTube and listening right along with us as we go live and joining in, interacting with us on Twitter and just listening to the show as we put it out. And we appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. So just as always, just want to say thanks to all of the people that support us and the great network we're part of, Strange Society. All of you guys are awesome. A lot of great podcasts there. And just I'm having a blast.
Right on. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, no specific shout outs. I do want to say that I have noticed on my travel vlogs that I watch that apparently we can travel to Canada again. And I just want to tell the people of Saskatchewan that I am going to be out there sometime soon. So I will look forward to hearing from you all, and maybe we can get together and have one of Ken's beers or something, or a local Saskatchewan brew. But I intend to be visiting Saskatoon in the near future.
Right on, right on. Horo, what do you got?
Oh, well, I'm checking my travel schedule and yeah,
Come
not
with
I'm going too far.
You're going to the next room. You're going from room 1 to room 2.
Room 2, yeah, that's about as far as it gets here. Anyway, tonight's shout out goes to my friend, the Bleeding Critic. That's at Bleeding Critic on Twitter, otherwise known as the Clown. Definitely follow him. He does great reviews, and he just did a little promo spot for us. We did not ask him to do that. He's been a longtime follower,
right on,
and supporter. So he did that, and it was really cool. And I know he did one recently for Crash as well. So definitely support him. Huge horror fan. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel, and he just puts out such great content, all wearing a clown mask. We only know him as the Clown. So if you're into that and you like that kind of thing, or looking for a scary clown, he's the one to go to. Otherwise than that, lots of horror coming at you, continuing to spread the horror. It's keeping me plenty busy, so continue to take it, horror fans, and spread the horror.
Right on. Yeah, so Muse alluded to something. We are part of the Strange Society Network. We got a lot of great shows. If you're looking for a new podcast to listen to, there's so many to choose from. True Crime, Real Time Pod, Our True Crime Podcast, Misery Loves Garlic Bread, Crash Palace. You can listen to Harrison Smith's Cinema Podcast, which is a really great show. Horror Nights In. And then we also added 2 new shows to the mix. Tony Source Rex, who Muse and I are really good friends with, and we've been on his show a few times. But Anything But the Podcast, he has his show. Definitely check that out. And Behind the Screams podcast. Now, Ian, he's from Scotland. I listened to his show and I loved it. It was a lot like our show. Really great reviews, and you can't go wrong with the Scottish accent. But definitely check out all those shows. Follow the Strange Society Network at strangepod.net. Or sorry, strangepod.net. I'm Monster Mash Ken. It has been a pleasure talking to everybody tonight. Big shout out to our guest, Richie Acevedo, Julio, and Jimmy Flame. Thank you so much, you guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you a good night. Until next time, my friends, keep it scary.